There we go. So welcome to a beautiful Saturday of computer science. You are in room 2, moving CS from a subject to an experience, and our host is going to be Talon Hatch. Talon, I'm saying your name correctly, right?
Yep, you got it. Yeah.
Talon is a senior partnership manager for Skillstruck. He graduated from BYU in communications and business management and has been working in the education technology field for a little over 5 years. He's passionate about education and its innovation going forward. He joined Skillstruck to help make computer science engaging and accessible to all demographics of students to prepare the workforce of tomorrow successfully. His focus, or I guess you would say Skillstruck's focus, which Talon is a big part of, is to help schools and districts create a K12 CS aligned curriculum with established student pathways that lead to a fluid, consistent approach to CS education and students with the necessary 21st century skills. And we could go on, but let's get to Talon. It's all you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, kind of appreciate it. I feel like a lot of that's kind of preaching to the choir at a computer science conference, right? But we're excited to have you here. And I also have my colleague Isaac here on the call who be helping out in the chat, adding some thoughts, and works with me throughout the state. So really excited to be with you all this morning. I'll go ahead and share my screen here and get started. And throughout this presentation, I'd love participation. To get started, if you want to throw in the chat your name, who you are, where you're from, your experience. We always like to get to know who's joining us. I'm based out of the Salt Lake City area, yeah, get to know me a little bit better. I guess I've got a little 18-month-old that hopefully won't be trying to bang through the door too much throughout this presentation, but if you hear crazy noises, that'll be him in the background. But really excited, really passionate about computer science and love working with our partners throughout Nevada. And to get started, before we dive in and do some more introductions, I need a volunteer who knows how to count to 50. So someone who's willing to unmute and is able to count 1 to 50. Do I have a willing, able volunteer to help me do that? It is a Saturday morning. I do understand that, but I think it's not a terrible task to ask.
Do I have to use number 1?
Well, we'll see. So Sandra, are
Yes.
you willing then?
Yeah.
I'll show you what you do. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull up on the screen here. There's gonna be all the numbers 1 through 50. You need to find them on the screen, and once you find that number, you can say 1, and when you found 2, you can say 2. When you find 3, you can 3, all the way up to 50. Okay, so for example, we're going to see how long it takes you to find each number and count to 50, because all you really have to do is count to 50. So I'll show you what that looks like. So now find the number 1 on the screen to start,
1.
and go to 2,
Okay.
and go for it.
Oh, so I'm gonna do 1-to-1 correspondence, like looking at the number, pointing at the number.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. 4. Oh gosh. 5. Duh. 5. Oh my gosh.
Okay, we'll stop you right there. We won't keep torching you, Sandra. That we set you up for a little bit of failure, right? Even when I just said let's have you count to 50, it wasn't as straightforward as maybe we thought. But what if we gave you a little more direction in telling if we divided up these numbers into quadrants and saying, okay, for example, now if we go to the next screen, see how I have these lines drawn? From left to right is going to be 1, 2, 3, and each those corresponding numbers will continue down in each quadrant. So if you can see, 1 is in that first one on the left, 2, then 3. You see what how that process
Yes.
works?
Oh my
Now let's see you
gosh.
try it.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh my, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh yeah, 13.
Perfect. All right.
Beautiful.
That was a great example. Thank you for being a willing participant. Everyone give Sandra a round of applause and for letting me trick her a little bit, but being a good sport about it. Now, this is a little bit of a funny way to start, but Isaac and I love to do this as it's part of our presentations because it applies a lot to the way that we talk about and incorporate computer science K12, in that if we don't have a good structure, a good way of going about computer science across all grade levels, and have a way that we can do it effectively and make sure everyone's on the same page and we can reach everybody, then sometimes we're like Sandra was on that first stage where we're just trying to piece things together all over the place, and that doesn't lead to a more equitable and engaging way of doing computer science. And so what we're going to be talking about today in this session is how we can, often when we talk about building the bench in CTE or into our secondary programs, how do we feed those upper level programs in the high school and industry certifications, prepare students for futures? What stories of success we've seen around the country in doing that, having equitable access, and the idea of how really computer science, we can specify CTE here, but really any career pathway students are going to be participating in the future is going to involve computer science. And so how can we eliminate the stereotypes that surround it often, and what can you do as a part of your school, your district, to get equitable access earlier and start to think of that impact across all grade levels? So we at SkillsTrek and with a lot of our partners around the country, we talk about what does it mean to build a bench and what does that entail? So when we think about a bench, right, often we think of it as a sports analogy where you've got your bench warmers, the people who are being prepared to come in at any time to fill in another substitute on the field or preparing for the future to be the future starters. There's lots of ways to think about it. And in our world, it's trying to think of why is this important, right? It's allowing you to be able to prepare for the future of your next generation, the next man up, the next woman up. That idea of we're trying to prepare of what's going on. And so the idea is, where can we get them? Where do we start? How can we do this? There are a lot of questions that we like to think about. And a good way to start here is, who is good at this? So I'm going to share here a couple of examples of people who are really good at building the bench of starting young and going to the future. For example, cereal companies are really good at building their bench. They've got all kinds of really delicious, yummy cereals for the younger kiddos that I got hooked on. They say Trix is for kids. I'm still eating Trix, but then they lead on from Trix. Then they have more adult cereals from the same company as you grow older, right? So they have a wide range of ages that they want you to get hooked on eating cereal to keep going older. I'm still eating the kids cereal. I guess I didn't really follow that progression. But that's kind of the idea, right? With cereal companies do really well. Wrestling coaches do this really well also. I know, like where I live, I mean, they're already doing camps with the elementary kids in the summer, getting them participating in working with the high school coaches or the middle school and junior high coaches, so that they're starting to get kids involved in their programs earlier, getting excited about wrestling and following through on those things, right? We also see that with YouTube. There's channels now within YouTube. YouTube's done a great job of hooking all ages now, from kids at an early age. There's all kinds of shows, to Mr. Beast, to any kind of how you can do video, where there's something for everyone. And now they've started to hook people even earlier with their content and keeping them engaged as they get older and they progress. I'm curious if there's any other great examples of things that come to mind for any of you, of those who are really good at building their bench. Any other thoughts? Feel free to unmute, to raise your hand, or throw something in the chat.
I'd love to hear what you guys have in Nevada. I know in my neighborhood, debate is big. So our middle school takes like state in debate, and same thing with our high school. And so they come to the elementary schools and do fun little practice debates where they do these oratory speeches for the kids. And so they get really excited. I'd love to hear what programs you guys have that help promote that whole K-12 engagement and enrollment so they can get really good at things.
Hi, how are you guys?
Hey, yeah, what do you have? So we'd love to hear it.
So we have magnet schools, of course, like most cities, and long story short, they come down and they recruit the elementary school students and they do fairs to kind of engage students. And what's nice about it is that students in at-risk neighborhoods or areas are able to get that opportunity to go to those schools. And the recruitment piece alone, just they bring the students with them, is just magnificent.
Awesome. Love that example. That's a great example. And we're seeing a lot of that, right? And throughout the state of Nevada, throughout the country, and trying to get more involvement earlier. Janie, the robotics, Lego League early, all the way to, VEX and even further on, right, is a great example of building that bench. And so as we're thinking about it, it's like, what does this have to do with computer science? What does this have to do with what we're trying to learn today? And a big part is the landscape. The reason why we're talking so much about this is obviously our world has changed quite a bit, right, over even just the last 10 years. And something that's interesting of just some of the challenges that we're seeing is, there's a declining male graduation rate at the university level, which in some ways is not always bad if they're going to receive other types of professional certifications or go to professional schools or that kind of apprenticeship, but we're not necessarily seeing a huge increase in those areas either. We're seeing more women graduating, but not a huge change in some of the traditional male dominant fields within computer science and some of the CTE and technology. We're seeing more and more jobs require computer science technology skills, like computational thinking, programming. And often what we see is this conversation of nobody not really knowing what to do with computer science, the law space. Who owns it? There's part of it in elementary, there's part in CTE, and in secondary. Is this teaching and learning? Is this just our CTE that has to worry about it, our instructional technology? And so that's something we're seeing throughout the country and part of the state. And part of this is trying to think, so why this matters, how can we address this? What are some different ways we can go about changing that narrative? Because, we've solved the challenge of getting more women getting degrees and such at a higher in higher education compared to before, right? But we're seeing a decrease in men there, but also we're not seeing women increase in some of those technology fields. We're not seeing that increase despite the increase of education and those degrees. And part of the thinking with that, and there's some more statistics to show even over like roughly the last 10 years or so of what even computer scientists specifically look like over the last few years. And so why this matters even more now in our changing world is this is a really interesting graph that I like to study is the pace of innovation and user adoption is accelerating. It's really interesting to see from when the landline came, just the turn of the century in 1900, how long it took to be adopted across really the country versus the moment like the computer and the internet and smartphone, we see a really steep adoption curve there compared to some of those others. So that the rate of which technology is being adopted is only accelerating. I mean, look what's happening just with the introduction of Chat GPT, right? That's been a few weeks and it's already starting to change the way that we do things, the way we look at technology and so forth. And so that adoption is only accelerating and times are continuing to change that way. And because of that, we're seeing, as you all know, as computer science advocates, that it's becoming computer science technology, these skills, is becoming a part of every industry that we see, from biomedics to agriculture, construction, music, entertainment, culinary arts, some of these areas that often are totally considered separate from technology have completely changed in what they're able to do. And we're seeing an increased, as far as blue collar versus white collar, we're seeing more of a merging between the two, of not so separate, because of technology being involved in both those areas, and really both are being engaged and need these necessary skills. And there's not such a hard line as there may have been in the past, or at least culturally, that perception of white collar versus blue collar has changed quite a bit and continues to change going forward within that. And something to think about as we look at Nevada specifically, when we talk about computer science, obviously it's a big reason why we're having conferences of like this is, you know, there's a lot of open jobs, almost 5,000 currently in the state. It's still the #1 source of new wages throughout the country, and the employment rates are only going to continue to increase compared to other job occupations. And a median starting salary is still a really great salary going into jobs related to computer science, right? That's something that's not going away. And we see similar things throughout the rest of the United States, right? Of what we're just seeing for Nevada specifically. And so even more than just the computer science specific space, there's a really interesting statistic from the Department of Labor that more than half, 65% of students that are currently in all of your classrooms are going to be in a STEM related job that doesn't currently exist. And so that's an interesting thing to think about, is we're trying to prepare kids for a future that is little unknown, that we don't know exactly what is even going to look like. And so the big part of teaching computer science is that it allows students to become problem solvers, right? It allows them to develop that computational thinking and become the problem solvers that we need for the future going forward.
Hey, Talon, can I quickly ask a question of the people in here? Is that okay if I interrupt you? I do this a lot to them. Hopefully it doesn't drive them crazy too much. But one question I do have is like, so Talon's been talking about how we're building a bench, how we really need computer science. I'm really curious. We hear this, like we hear the narrative across the country where kids start dropping off in computer science, and where that is. Sometimes it happens, you know, like when they're going to middle school or going to high school. More granular, a lot of times we see it as like, hey, once they have to move from block coding to syntax code and things like that. I'm curious, when you guys start seeing that shift, like we see all these numbers, would it shift from everybody to just more male occupied things in Nevada, or where you guys are seeing those drop-offs? Because we're trying to build the bench earlier on, and we'd like to help with those transitions. And I think that's part of what Talon's talking about, right, Tom? Hopefully I didn't interrupt you at a bad spot. I don't know your thing well enough to know what a good part was to chime in, but
no, you're good. We're getting to that question actually.
Okay, that's my fault. So sorry. I'll let Talon keep going. I apologize. If you guys can start thinking about what
keep thinking about that, because that's exactly actually where we're headed within that, because within that is trying to find where you're seeing those gaps and such. So within there, I want you, like Isaac's been think about that, because we're about to talk about that all together as a group within here to collaborate. So think about what you're seeing in your own experience, because of these problem solving skills are essential going forward, because it teaches how to think and how we want to approach everything. We want to wonder, okay, if it's so important and it helps them improve their scores in math and science, you are all advocates of computer science. You know this, you know the impact it can have on kids. They're better at problem solving, they're better at executive thinking. It just improves everything all the way around. I guess the question is, if it's so important, how are we doing in getting it to all of our kids? And going back to what Isaac's talking about is thinking about, okay, where are we missing those buckets? Because again, kind of looking at some of those statistics is, you know, we're still seeing a large gap in underserved populations getting involved in the computer science workforce. And this is just the computer science workforce, not thinking about what we just talked about before, all those other industries that are needing these skills as well. We're seeing a low number across just the participation AP computer science by gender between boys and girls. You know, we have more than half of the population are girls, and yet we see only 30% participating in those AP courses nationally. And yet students, women who participate in that are 10 times more likely to go and pursue it after high school and graduation. The same with Black and Latino students are 8 times more likely in high school, if they participate in high school, to do it and major in college and pursue a career in that. And so a big part, obviously, the question is not so much on, is there interest, is there a need, because those who actually participate in it excel in it and continue on. And so going back to Isaac's question, as a group here, I'd love to hear, what are you seeing in your schools, in your classes, and your experiences of where those gaps are of what we can do to reach more kids? Where are those areas that you're seeing that we can try to do better on? Cecilia gave a great example earlier, right, of the magnet programs, which is elementary, for some demographics of students who really need it, right, and making sure they have those resources early. What are some other things that you're seeing or would like to see as well?
And I'm going to throw it out there too. Are those working? Like, the magnets are working earlier on, but are you keeping the same demographics all the way through 12? Do they usually stay in those pretty well and it retains them? Or do we lose a lot of demographics and kids and things like that as they get older and maybe their interests shift? And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We're just trying to figure out, like, I would wanting to understand here in Nevada, if it's the same that we're seeing in other areas of the country, of like when we lose kids and why. We have our theories. I can talk for hours and hours. So can Talon about our theories. We want to hear yours.
I think so I'm Janie and I'm from Northern Nevada. And so we're very rural. And I think it's the stigma a lot of times in our area, you know, we don't have a lot of the resources and stuff that the major metropolitan areas do. So we as teachers, we have to get on fire. And as Brandy Johnson and Carlin Goodale there in Carlin, we have to get on fire and want to be able to teach these kids, you know, and expand it from, you know, the high school, just like, you know, you showed building a team, you know, you have to build it from little league all the way up, you know. And I think that teachers, you have to be excited about, we have to have the professional development. And I know I love the fact of those magnet schools. I've never had the opportunity to teach or even go visit one or see it. But I think that's, you know, being that computer science, you know, with the teachers, I think that, I mean, I'm just now taking a computer science. I'm a math teacher, but, you know, and I struggle trying to incorporate it into my classes and stuff. So I'm working on learning that and getting over that curve. But I think it's the fear of, you know, it's that fear. But that's my.
Awesome. Janie, thanks so much. We'll talk some more about what you just shared throughout the rest of our conversation, but you hit the nail on the head, especially for our rural communities, right? In getting
Northern Nevada, sorry,
Northern Nevada, please.
In a rural area and Breas mentality. I mean, I think I can do better as a teacher, but I think we deal with a lot of the mentality of they don't want it, they don't need it. This is a waste of our time, and they're forced to take it for the high school credit. I think it's middle school, but that's been cycling through. I've been doing this for 16 years, and that's been cycling through every so many years, and we're back at it again. Where don't need it, don't want it, don't care.
So yeah, changing that perception, right? The branding around what computer science is, what it looks like, what it entails, and changing maybe the stereotype stigmas, right? It's a challenge for a lot. It's been a lot of different areas for sure.
So, you know, we're not doing all that we could be doing. So when we cut programs.
Thank you, Trista, for sharing. A lot of great things in the chat as well. Of finding space, finding teachers, especially in that middle school space, there's often a big gap, right? And we see that a lot of places. And so that's kind of what we'll lead into now as part of the discussion, is some things that we've seen around the country to help with those things that really a lot of you hit on, right? In changing the branding of computer science, what it looks like, and finding ways to have that K12 alignment within computer science. That's a big part of what SkillStrike, what our focus is as a part of the school districts is, we have a built out curriculum and resources, but we want to come in as a partner and share ideas with people who work with us and people who don't, of how they can address and change computer science and help teachers, regardless of their experience. Awesome people like Janie, who just shared, who's a math teacher who's trying to do computer science, trying to take it on, have resources and tools to not be alone in that and really make a difference as a part of that, and destroy those stereotypes and change the way that we view that rural community piece. Is something that's close to my heart. All my family is from rural Utah and rural Wyoming, as all my roots, and all of that focus of trying to change the way that opportunities for people who are living in those communities to stay in those communities, have great opportunities for jobs and resources, and just the way that we view the workforce going forward in those opportunities. I want to give you an example of the rebranding of not just how it works in computer science, but how it can work across a lot of different areas that we teach as well in our schools. One of our partners in Weber School District in northern Utah, they were seeing their CT director. He just got actually named one of the CT directors of the year. He saw a issue that bugged him where his Culinary Arts program was full of girls, which he was excited to have so many girls, but for every 9 girls, he maybe had 1 boy, if that. And he wanted to change that and say, how can we change the branding of everything that is entailed with Culinary Arts? So he actually called up Traeger Grills and said, hey, can you donate some Traeger grills if you're familiar with Traeger grills or smokers, awesome grills, and said, I want to make this a part of our Culinary Arts program. Would you be willing to donate that? They did. And he added and kind of rebranded the way that their Culinary Arts program and found that with all elements that entails with Culinary Arts, the chef side, the baking side, the smoking of meat side, he was able to get more students involved who never previously had been participating before, and found actually about now his program's about almost 50-50 in participation, at least between boys and girls participating in his program, all because of that shift of understanding the stereotype of, yes, Culinary Arts is like the chef we see here, but it's also smoking meats and doing things on the grill, and it's much more than that. It's not just that small part. Another thing that I really like that they recently did is, in that idea we talk about computer science as part of every workforce that we now see, is they have a large part of their community is in agriculture and kind of more rural part of the state, and where there's a lot of agriculture, a lot of ranching, a lot of farming. And they have a really great ag program where you can see, here's this picture of these really cool irrigation tools and robotics that they've been working on with their students. But the challenge was, as some of these robotics and these tools started breaking down or having issues, and the students didn't know how to fix them. And so the interesting thing is, the ag teacher started working with the computer science teacher, combining their students together to teach each other about each other's different fields, and helping the ag students know how to work these devices, how to fix them, how to program, and change these, what he called their cowboys and their farmers and cowgirls, into saying, hey, this technology is a useful tool, what you're going to need going forward. And now there's a combining of a K12 alignment throughout the district of how they're approaching computer science and what that looks like as a part of that branding. Some other things that we've seen to help, just a couple other parts of that, of changing titles within like the middle school to something called like creative coding, or solving problems with technology, innovating agriculture, musical coding, to reach more students, more demographics, change that branding of, what one teacher he was very anti-computer science, or had a very strong stereotype. He once said to me, it's computer science is for your weird uncle in a dark basement in front of a black screen with green letters across, like a very stereotypical movie, media-driven vision. But we all know that's not the case. And so if we can change the way that people view, the way we talk about our courses, it can really help. That communication between teachers, administrators, counselors, how the counselors talk about their classes, they're talking with kids, especially in that middle school space. Having community code nights where we do this for free. It's something that was part of Skill Strike that we just do, where we do them bilingually in English and Spanish, where we do them virtually or in person, where families and communities come to the school, or do it from home, where we do an intro to computer science and coding so that families can engage with their students, learn more about what coding is, what it's not, and help get their buy-in from their parents, right? And have an option to do it in Spanish as well, to not have language be a barrier for that engagement. And then also finding ways to integrate it into math, science, and ELA are some things that we're seeing. I'd love to hear from you all. What are some other things you have seen that your district have done, or you've seen others do, that have changed the way that computer science is branded or talked about in your school or district?
I think you're right on the money with changing the names of the courses. The school, I was at a STEM school previous to my current position, and they changed coding to digital music and received a lot more interest.
Yeah, love that example. Right, and you know, just simple something like that, or creative coding. We see a lot of our people who are more creative mind are thinking that way. We see a lot of increase more of girls wanting to participate in those things. Of using, one other thing is, we know a lot of times girls have been really good at wanting to help and solve problems from a lot of statistics, and changing the name to have something like the solving problems with technology, or creating change with problem solving, with technology, are cool ways to rebrand and get more kids involved that maybe normally wouldn't think computer science is for them. So great example. What else? Anything else?
I want to throw one thing out here, is that I think it was Deneen that mentioned it's helpful when they have technology all the way through, and it makes a big difference for kids as they keep on learning technology. But there's also a branding issue right now with technology, especially after we got out of COVID. A lot of parents and teachers and administrators don't want to see kids in front of their screens as much. And I'll be honest, maybe this is a little bit too vulnerable. I'm trying to lose weight. I've been trying to do it for a long time, and I'm being successful in doing it. Food can have a really bad branding thing for me, too much, right? But for me, what I've realized, if I eat so much good food, there's not enough room for like the chips when I'm hungry and things like that. So if I eat more vegetables and eat more healthy stuff, and I choose to have that in my diet, there's not as much room for the bad. I'm seeing that as the same thing with technology. Is if we can teach kids how to use technology in a healthy way, how to code, how to do robotics, how to do, somebody was teaching digital arts. I think Heather teaches digital arts, things that are healthy with technology. Then they have something to do when they get on their screens, because screens are addictive. And there are some things that have very low bars, some video games that are really easy to play for 14 hours at a time, or social media things that are really easy to be able to do. And if the kids don't pick up technology and associate it with the healthy foods, the healthy activities, the healthy things, they're going to spend all day doing those things. And I think we see as educators, and you see as educators, a huge benefit if they continually have those healthy relationships with technology. But that branding thing can be difficult. And I know it's a difficult discussion, but I wanted to bring that up and see if that resonates with anybody, or if maybe I missed a couple of key points that you've seen all out there as educators when it comes to integrating technology.
Yeah. Great comment from Nikki. That's something we stress a lot, is help students be creators and not just consumers, right, of technology. Thanks for sharing that, Nikki. That's a huge point. Awesome. Anything else on that?
This is Janine. I'm a middle school counselor, but I work a lot with our teachers and our even some of our curriculum and have been a big proponent of adding computer science. And I appreciate everything that's gone on to really include. I think the biggest thing that we find, even when we interview new teachers, and we ask them their comfort level with technology, we don't get a lot. I think the more training and the more experiences teachers have with how to integrate technology in their classes, no matter what they teach and what level, that it makes a really big difference in them actually doing it. So I think that's probably one of our biggest hurdles, is not just having computer science teachers, but teachers that know how to integrate it with what they're teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to work with higher education to make sure that's part of their pre-service education, right? Pre-service teachers, as they're going through and preparing, that they have that experience, those tools to be successful, right? And helping teachers who've been also in the classroom for 15, 20 years to continue to learn and progress and be willing to take on those new challenges, and are provided with those opportunities to learn it and engage it in technology with their students as well. So yeah, Deneen, thanks. That's a great point, and something we've offered to universities as well is just free access to a lot of our curriculum and content, so that they can engage with teachers and give them exposure to computer science, to integrating the math, science, and ELA, so they can see that that's a huge opportunity. So thanks, Deneen, for bringing that up, because it's a big part. As we try to change the way that our world looks and the way stereotypes are, to make things more engaging and accessible for more and more people going forward. I want to share something that's a big part as we think about the branding as well as the K12 alignment, is something a few of you hit on, particularly in that upper elementary, middle school grade, something that a friend of mine likes to call the cool, not cool stage. We got to reach kids before the cool, not cool stage and get to them sooner. And a good example of this is this is actually our head of partnerships. This is Brian Groen, a picture with his daughter, Breas. And she previously had not had any experience. This is her when she was about 10 years old, 11 years old, and had not ever really wanted to do any programming, wanted to do any computer science. It wasn't a big part of her school at the time. And Brian, her dad, got her involved in doing a little bit of coding, actually through Skillshare, doing some web development, trying to do some simple HTML. She's a creative person. He thought it'd be a good way for her to get started, introduce to some coding. And it turned into something that she really enjoyed doing. She really liked building websites. She liked having the technology side, the creative side, the design side. And something that's cool that she actually ended up doing from that skill set is she's unique in the sense that she actually likes to detail cars. It's something she likes, things that are very tidy and very clean. And she wanted to create a little side business that she could do for neighbors and friends to detail cars. And with her new skills, even as an 11-year-old girl, she built a really simple website for people to sign up for her to go and do car detailing, and create a little side business for her and earn a little extra money in the summer, on the side after school, and on the weekends. All because she got introduced to these skills earlier, even though despite her previous hesitancy to actually get into computer science, once she started and had something that was accessible to her, it changed everything about her. And now she's able to do that. She even created her own little entrepreneurship off of that skill set. So as we think about that, there's also other ways that we can change the way that people view computer science and these skills as part of the branding and reach them sooner. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Rober. He's a YouTuber, former NASA engineer, really awesome guy, has some really, really neat, cool videos on there of things that he's built and created, that he programs and creates with his engineering background. But he's doing a really great job of helping kids see different ways to use these skill sets for all kinds of fun things, both that are more unique and more useful than others. This is a quick video of something that he built that's a good example of how he's used his engineering skills to impact one area of his life.
But I'm good at engineering, which means I'm actually really good at darts. Oh. Most of the projects and builds for my YouTube channel take a month or two to pull off, but I've been working on this beast with my former NASA coworker John for over 3 freaking years, and here she finally is.
So there's a little snippet of that video of him doing something as simple as, I'm really bad at throwing darts, so I'm gonna create a dartboard that will follow my dart wherever it's at, right? Using those engineering and skills. And he does a really great job of rebranding what computer science looks like and what engineering can look like for students. I'd recommend you look at some more of his videos. There's a lot of really cool things of how he's changing what computer science is and what it's not. Another example of trying to reach students sooner, this is one of our partners in Moreno Valley, California. Moreno Valley Unified School District, this is Donna Wood. She actually was awarded Cybersecurity Teacher and Educator of the Year by the White House back in 2020. Really passionate about STEAM and technology, computer science. And they were seeing a challenge where they are a minority majority district in their population, and yet they were seeing not a lot of equity in their courses that they were offering at the high school level. A lot of within their cybersecurity programs and software development. And so they were wanting to get more equity in the students that are participating in that. And so we worked with them in their middle school to actually introduce an intro to technology and STEM course. And the teacher that was taking it on was a former social studies teacher. She had never done anything with technology and STEM, but was willing to take it on and recognize that they needed to add something like this within their middle school program. And it was pretty incredible to see what happened. This actually was even in the year 2020 of the pandemic, where they're able to see increase of student participation by 43% in their computer science courses, just from introducing that one simple elective course in the middle school. And with some of the tools like with SkillStruck, where it's designed to help teachers who are brand new to coding take it on, even without prior computer science experience, they're able to see an increase in those enrollments. And a large part of that because they started introducing this in 6th and 7th grade. And so students were introduced earlier and more likely then to continue on and participate in it because they've added the next year an additional course in the middle school to then lead into what they could start taking in 9th grade and high school going forward. And so pretty exciting to see those enrollment numbers, but something that's even more important going forward is now addressing what does that look like in elementary, so that there really is a K12 alignment, because obviously reaching them in middle school and high school is important, but we don't want to have any gaps within where we're teaching computer science. So there could be, we've got the K12 standards, we want a K12 vertical alignment of what computer science looks like within our program, so that we can reach every student, so that we can reach them earlier, develop those problem solving skills earlier, help them be better across all areas, and then allow them to continue to grow and progress as they go through each grade level. Sorry, if I'm missing some of the chat, I appreciate you all who are helping on the chat. And if there's something in there, make sure I'll check in on those too. So something like, for example, that we work a lot with SkillStruck and with our partners and just in our conversations is, talking about a K12 alignment of what that looks like. This is a really, simplified version of some of those things. And happy to share example scope and sequences with people if you're trying to think about your vertical alignment with your school, your district, what that looks like, so that across every grade level, kids are getting access to computer science, and that we can build upon that. Teaching and learning is talking with CTE, and elementary and secondary are working together, just like we've done so well in math and in reading. There's a consistent progression across each grade level to do the same thing with computer science and those standards. And it's going to take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, right? But have a place where we can start, where we can build a plan, and where we can take it going forward. And a lot of ways to help with that is to blend the subject lines, because there's so much crossover with computer science. Within SkillStrek, we have a lot of cross-curricular content to math, science, ELA, but there's a lot of ways to do that with a lot of different resources to help teachers, particularly in that elementary space, see how they can do it. Because so often in education, we think of each subject, like taking a book off of a shelf of like, okay, now it's time for math. We're just going to do math. We're going to put math back up on the shelf. And now it's time for ELA. And we're going to take that book off, and then science and so forth, where, there's a lot of crossover, particularly with computer science, into all those areas. And if we can help teachers see that and change our mindset of combining various content, that allow us to more effectively engage with computer science. And so a big part of that, like we've just been talking about, is just trying to help have that equitable approach. And the biggest part is making sure that there's a vertical alignment, K12, because that's the best way to make sure every kid is getting those opportunities at each level, and helping them. Here's a couple other thoughts you can think about in trying to reach more students in your class, engage with more students in your classrooms going forward as a part of that. So obviously there's a lot of big challenges and problems to solve going forward, but some ideas of things that we've talked about today as a recap as we get prepared to finish up is, the idea is to start building the bench now. You don't have to have a full bench or a K12 alignment right off the bat if you don't have that yet, but having a place of where can we start and where can we build from, so that we can start here and next year have a little bit more, and the year after, and until we finally are at where we want to be. Obviously, industry has changed. It will continue to change. Computer science can be that secret weapon to help us prepare students across all different demographics and all different career paths, because they all need to be those excellent problem solvers, have those technical skills that computer science teaches so well and engages across all of it, because we can change the branding of what computer science looks like and make sure that there's a marriage between K5 and K8 and 9-12 and all these different grade levels that we're talking and working together as a part of that. That's a big focus and hope within SkillStrek, is to try to help do that. If you're interested in trying to learn more or see that example scope and sequence, feel free to reach out to me or Isaac. I'll put my email in the chat too. If you have questions or want to see examples or what curriculum or content or what other districts are doing, or have a brainstorm session with your team of what a vertical alignment could look like, what different things you could do. There's also one example scope and sequence you can look at here. I'll put in the chat. But that's the main idea, is trying to change and engage with more and more students across the level. So we're passionate about that. Happy to help answer questions, share ideas. So please reach out. Really appreciate your participation in the session, for being here on a Saturday. And we really thank you for your time. I'll hop on to see if there's any. I'll stay on here too, if you have any additional questions, throw them in the chat or unmute. If you have any other additional thoughts or comments, please add to it. But thank you for sure for being here on a Saturday. Any other last thoughts or questions before we wrap up, or Connie?